In 1974, a woman named Consuelo Rios stood in a kitchen in Boyle Heights with $3.40 for the entire week. She made 7 side dishes from that. No measuring cups, no recipe cards. Everything she knew came from her mother in Michoacan, passed by hand and memory across the border. The dish she made every single Friday is number 8 on this list. Number 17 cost less than 50 cents. Number 1 fed an entire carne asada for under $2. These 25 side dishes were the backbone of every Mexican-American meal through the 1970s. They sat next to the rice and the beans on plates in barrios from San Antonio to East Los Angeles. If you grew up with these on the table, you grew up the right way. Subscribe so you do not miss a single one. Let us count them down. Number 25. Verdolagas en salsa verde. Your abuela saw dinner where everyone else saw weeds. Porcelain grew wild in yards, in cracks in the sidewalk, in vacant lots across the barrio. She walked outside with a plastic bag and came back with enough greens to feed the whole family. She simmered them in salsa verde made from tomatillos, serrano chiles, and garlic. Sometimes she added chunks of pork. The dish turned silky and tangy and tasted like the earth itself. Verdolagas have been eaten in Mexico since before the Spanish arrived. Thousands of years of indigenous knowledge in one pot. Scientists now say porcelain is one of the richest plant sources of omega-3 fatty acids on the planet. Your abuela did not know that word. She just knew it was good and it was free. Today, most people walk past porcelain growing in their own yards without recognizing it as food. That tradition is disappearing with every generation that forgets to look down. Number 24. Ensalada de betabel. Beet salad. The shocking magenta color that stained everything it touched. Your abuela's hands turned pink for days after peeling them. She boiled the beets until tender, sliced them, and dressed them with white vinegar, onion, Mexican oregano, and a squeeze of lime. Some families added orange segments. In Oaxaca, they used an anise dressing that made the whole thing taste like a different country. This recipe goes back to 1790, when Friar Jerónimo de San Pelayo recorded beet salads in his monastery cookbook in Mexico City. That is 230 years of tradition on your plate. Beets were planted in convent and monastery gardens during the colonial era. By the 1970s, ensalada de betabel showed up at every carne asada in South Texas as a simple, cheap side. Today, almost nobody makes it. Your abuela peeled those beets without gloves and never complained. If you remember that color on her hands, you remember the old days. Number 23. Habas con nopales. Fava beans with cactus. This was Lenten food that felt ancient, because it was. The Catholic calendar shaped what Mexican-American families ate more than any cookbook ever did. No meat on Fridays. Habas were dried and filling. Nopales grew in backyards across the Southwest. Your abuela soaked the fava beans overnight, then simmered them with diced cactus paddles, tomato, onion, and epazote. The creamy, earthy beans against the slightly tart cactus was a combination that goes back centuries. A bag of dried habas cost about 20 cents in 1965. The nopales were right there in the yard. This dish disappeared because the next generation did not want to deal with cactus thorns. The spines are small and painful. The slime takes patience. Your abuela cleaned nopales without complaint from the age of 9. That skill left when she did. Number 22. Chiles capones. Stuffed peppers from Puebla, not the elaborate chiles rellenos, with egg batter and frying. These were the simple version that nobody remembers. Your abuela charred the jalapenos on the comal, peeled them, scooped out the seeds, and stuffed them with fresh queso fresco and a leaf of epazote. That was the whole recipe. No batter, no sauce, no show. Just pepper, cheese, and herb. The name capones means the peppers were caponed, de-seeded and deveined, making them milder. This dish comes from Puebla, and it was made across many regions of Mexico. While everyone talks about chiles rellenos and chiles en nogada, this humble cousin has almost disappeared. Your abuela threw these together in 10 minutes on a Tuesday. There was nothing fancy about them. They didn't need to be. Now, that was the whole point. Number 21st. Flor de calabaza. Squash blossom quesadillas. The golden orange blossoms piled high at the Saturday morning mercado. Your abuela carefully cleaned each delicate flower, removing the stems and pistils. She sautéed them with onion, garlic, and epazote until they wilted. Then, she filled fresh corn tortillas with the blossoms and the strips of Oaxaca cheese and cooked them on the comal. In central Mexico, these quesadillas were made with blue corn masa and sold at market stalls for centavos. The blossoms have a light, slightly sweet flavor, and they only last a day or two after picking. That is what made them special. You couldn't save them. You couldn't store them. They had to be eaten the moment they were ready. Squash was cultivated in pre-Hispanic Mesoamerica, and the blossoms have been eaten since before the Spanish arrived. When was the last time you saw these at anyone's table? If you grew up eating these, you remember. That tradition is fading fast. Number 20. Papas con rajas. Potatoes with roasted poblano strips. This was the ultimate between paychecks dinner that never felt like sacrifice. Your abuela roasted the poblanos on the stove flame, peeled them, cut them into strips, and sauteed them with cubed potatoes and onion. She added a swirl of Mexican crema and let it simmer until everything turned smoky and creamy. Rolled into a warm flour tortilla, this was a complete meal. Two of the cheapest ingredients in the Mexican kitchen. Potatoes were 10 cents a pound, poblanos were 20 cents. The whole dish fed a family for less than 50 cents. This was also a common taco filling. Tacos de papa con rajas showed up at taquerias, on street corners, and in every kitchen where the budget had run out. Your abuela made magic out of potatoes and peppers. Here is the thing. That was not poverty. That was a skill. Number 19. Tortas de papa. Mexican potato patties. Your abuela boiled potatoes, mashed them with queso fresco, shaped them into small patties, coated them in flour, and fried them golden. Then she smothered them in tomato and serrano salsa. These were Lenten food that you actually loved. Potatoes were about 10 cents a pound in the 1970s. The whole dish was practically free to make. During Cuaresma, families across Mexico needed meatless options that still felt like a real meal. Tortas de papa were the answer. The crispy outside and the soft cheesy inside, that contrast was everything. Some families filled them with tuna. Some added chorizo after Lent ended. But the plain cheese version was the one your abuela made year-round. She shaped perfect little patties with her hands every single time. The same size, the same thickness, decades of practice in those fingers. Simple food from back then that tasted like everything. Number 18. Chiles rellenos de queso. Cheese stuffed poblano peppers. This was not a quick weeknight meal. This was a Sunday afternoon labor of love, and that is exactly why it has disappeared. Your abuela roasted the poblanos over the gas flame until the skin blistered and blackened. She wrapped them in a damp towel and let them sweat. She peeled them with her bare hands. She stuffed each one with Oaxaca or Chihuahua cheese. She separated the eggs, whipped the whites until stiff, folded in the yolks, dipped each pepper in the batter, and fried them until golden. She served them in a tomato sauce that had been simmering since morning. The whole production took all afternoon. In 1974, poblanos cost about 20 cents a pound. Cheese was 89 cents. A dozen eggs cost 61 cents. An entire platter of chiles rellenos cost about $2 to make. Diana Kennedy documented this tradition in her 1972 cookbook, The Cuisines of Mexico. She knew it was already slipping away. The younger generation watched their mothers go through that ritual. and decided it was too much work. They were not wrong about the work, but they were wrong about what they lost. Because chiles rellenos were never just food. They were the way your abuela said it was Sunday, the way she said the family was worth the effort, the way she proved that love sometimes looks like standing at the stove for 4 hours without complaint. Nobody makes them from scratch anymore, and that is why Sundays feel different now. Number 17. Arroz verde. Mexican green rice. The surprise on people's faces, why is the rice green? That reaction was the best part. Your abuela blended roasted poblano peppers with cilantro, parsley, and garlic into a bright green puree. She toasted the rice in oil until golden, then added the green puree and chicken broth. The pot was set on low with a tight lid, and nobody touched it. 20 minutes later, the rice was vibrant green and herbaceous, completely different from the red rice at every restaurant. Arroz verde is believed to have originated in Veracruz. It is one of Mexico's 3 traditional rice preparations, alongside red and yellow. But this one was rare. This was home cooking. This was special occasion rice. When your abuela made arroz verde, you knew something good was happening. A birthday, a homecoming, a celebration that deserved better than ordinary. If you remember that green rice, you remember what those days felt like. Number 16. Nopales a la mexicana. Cactus with tomato, onion, and chile. The Mexican flag on a plate. Red from the tomatoes, white from the onion, green from the cactus and the chiles. Your abuela handled those slimy, strange-looking cactus paddles like it was the most normal thing in the world. She diced them, boiled them briefly to remove the slime, then sauteed them with the trinity of tomato, onion, and serrano. Kids from school did not understand what you were eating. That mild, slightly tart flavor went with everything. Nopales have been part of the Mexican diet for 9,000 years, cultivated by the Aztecs and Maya. No nation eats more cactus than Mexico. In the 1970s, nopales were everyday food in Mexican-American households. Then families assimilated, and the cactus paddles stopped appearing at the table. Your abuela cleaned and cooked them without thinking. For her, it was as natural as breathing. A forgotten dish that made you different and that you now miss desperately. Number 15. Cebollitas asadas. Grilled green onions. If you have ever been to a proper carne asada, you know these. Cambray onions are laid out on the grill grate, slowly blistering alongside the meat, that sweet, smoky char. Your abuela squeezed lime and sprinkled salt on them right off of the fire. The charred outer layer peeled away to reveal a sweet, soft center. In the 1970s, no backyard carne asada was complete without a bundle of these. Cebollas cambray are Mexican spring onions with a larger bulb than regular green onions, slightly sweet and mild. They were cheap. A bundle cost almost nothing. And they were the indispensable companion to every taco and every piece of roasted meat. Your father pulled them off the grill and handed you one, still steaming. You burned your fingers and did not care. You cannot have a proper carne asada without cebollitas. Everyone who grew up with them knows that. Pause for 1 second. Number 14. Ejotes a la mexicana. Mexican-style green beans. Mom snapping green beans at the kitchen table, making you help even though you wanted to go play outside. That sound. The snap of a fresh bean between your fingers. She sauteed them with the Mexican flag trinity. Tomatoes for red, onion for white, serrano chile for green. A la mexicana means the dish uses ingredients representing the 3 colors of the Mexican flag. Green beans were about 25 cents a pound. The whole dish cost practically nothing. This was not a recipe anyone wrote down. It was the side dish that showed up at every weeknight dinner across Mexican-American homes from the 1950s through the 1970s. It sat next to the rice and the beans on every plate. 3 colors, 3 ingredients, 1 perfect bite. And here is the thing most people forget. These simple side dishes were the ones that made the meal complete. The rice and beans got the credit. The main dish got the attention. But the ejotes, the nopales, the calabacitas, those were the dishes that proved your abuela cared about every single thing on that plate. Not just the centerpiece, everything. She did not make 7 side dishes because she had to. She made them because that was how a meal was supposed to look. Complete, balanced, beautiful. That standard has almost disappeared from Mexican-American tables. The main course survived. The sides did not. And the plate looks emptier because of it. Number 13. Cuelites, wild Mexican greens. Your abuela walked through the yard or through a vacant lot, picking plants that nobody else recognized as food. She knew exactly which ones were good. Verdolagas, quintoniles, quelite cenizo, papalo. There are approximately 350 species of quelite plants used in traditional Mexican cuisine. The word comes from the Nahuatl culitl, meaning edible herb. She sautéed them with onion, garlic, tomato, and jalapenos. Free food that tasted incredible. Today, most people consider quelites weeds. Large agribusiness actively destroys them. High-end chefs are now trying to revive them in fine dining and charging $20 a plate for what your abuela picked from the backyard for nothing. That is the irony. The food she ate because it was free is now the food rich people eat because it is fashionable. She would not have understood that. Number 12. Chiles and vinagre. Mexican pickled peppers. Rows of glass jars in your abuela's pantry, each one dated with masking tape and a marker. That sharp vinegar smell when you cracked open a jar. Jalapenos were pickled with sliced carrots, onions, garlic, and spices in a vinegar brine. She made them with Mexican oregano, bay leaves, black peppercorns, and cumin seeds. The jars were ready in 20 minutes, and they lasted for months. Regional variations included adding cauliflower, baby potatoes, nopales, or green beans. In restaurants across Mexico, these sat in the center of every table as a free condiment before the main meal. In Mexican-American homes, there was always a jar within reach. The pickled carrots were the best part, and everyone fought over them. Your abuela made a new batch every 2 weeks through the 1970s. That steady rotation of jars was the rhythm of her kitchen. When she stopped, the heritage of that pantry went with her. Number 11. Esquites. Toasted corn in a cup. The sound of the elotero's cart bell coming down the street on a summer evening. Running outside with a quarter clutched in your hand. The elotero sauteed white corn kernels in butter with epazote, then scooped them into styrofoam cups. He squeezed lime, spooned on mayonnaise, sprinkled cotija cheese and chile powder, and handed it to you for 25 cents. You stood on the sidewalk with your friends, all eating from your cups. The word esquites comes from the Nahuatl izquitl, meaning toasted corn. According to Nahuatl stories, esquites were created by the deity Tlazochihuapili of the Xochimilcas. That history stretches back thousands of years. In the 1970s, corn was cheap, about 10 cents an ear. Your abuela made her own version at home with a heavy skillet and whatever corn was in season. That first squeeze of lime and the burn of chile on your lips. The thing is, that memory never leaves you. Pure childhood in a cup. Number 10. Calabacitas con queso. Mexican squash with cheese. Dad's backyard garden produced more squash than anyone knew what to do with. The round Mexican calabacita, slightly sweeter than zucchini, came off the vine faster than the family could eat it. Your abuela sliced them, sauteed them with fresh corn, tomatoes, onion, and jalapeno, and topped the skillet with strips of melting cheese. That was the whole recipe. A summer garden dish that showed up every other night from June through September. The smell of squash and corn sizzling in the skillet, with that thread of melting cheese pulling from the spoon. Families grew their own calabacitas and corn. The whole dish cost almost nothing when the garden was producing. Simple ingredients. Extraordinary flavor. This was popular across the Southwest, New Mexico, and in Tex-Mex kitchens everywhere. It was the taste of summer, when the garden stopped, when families moved to apartments, when nobody grew calabacitas anymore. That childhood memory faded with it. Number 9. Frijoles de olla. Beans from the pot, the most fundamental Mexican dish there is. Your abuela kept a clay pot of beans on the back burner of her stove at all times. Dried pinto beans, slow simmered in water with onion, garlic, and epazote in an olla de barro, until tender and broty. That specific gurgling sound of beans simmering could be heard from the next room. The common bean was first cultivated in what is now central Mexico, then spread to South America and Europe via the Spanish. Beans, corn, and chiles form the holy trinity of Mexican cuisine, dating back thousands of years. A 2-pound bag of dried beans cost about 30 cents in the 1970s and fed a family for days. You ate them with just a warm tortilla and a squeeze of lime. The simplest, most satisfying meal. Coming home from school and smelling that earthy, warm aroma meant you were home. That clay pot was always there. Back then, when the pot was empty, something felt wrong. Number 8. Arroz rojo. Traditional Mexican red rice. The sound of rice crackling in hot oil on the stove. That was how it started every single time. Your abuela toasted the long-grain white rice in oil until each grain turned golden. Then she added a blended tomato sauce with onion and the garlic, and poured in the chicken broth. She dropped in a few peas and diced carrots, put the lid on tight and said the same words every time: "Do not lift that lid." Rice was brought to Mexico by the Spanish in the 1500s, arriving first in Veracruz, where the humid climate was perfect for cultivation. The toasting technique, frying rice in oil before adding liquid, is distinctly Mexican. It creates a nutty flavor and keeps the grains separate. By the 1920s, Mexican rice was established in the American diet. Through the 1960s and the 1970s, it was the standard side on every combination plate in every restaurant. Rice cost about 15 cents a pound. A full pot feeding a family of 6 cost less than 50 cents. Now here is what nobody talks about when they remember these side dishes. It was never just the rice, or just the beans, or just the nopales. It was all of them together. Your abuela did not make one side dish. She made 4 or 5 every single night. The rice, the beans, the salad, the salsa, the whatever else she had. That was the real tradition that disappeared. Not one dish. The entire spread. The idea that a proper Mexican meal had layers and colors and the flavors that worked together on the same plate. That every dinner deserved that care. Restaurants still do it. They give you the rice and the beans because they have to. But the ensalada de nopales, the rajas, the calabacitas, those are gone, and the plate looks bare without them. Your abuela set a table that was alive with dishes. Every meal looked like a celebration even on a Tuesday. That standard of care, that refusal to serve anything incomplete, that is what we lost, not recipes. A way of eating. Number 7. Chiles toreados. Blistered peppers. That sizzle when whole serranos hit the hot oil. Your abuela did not flinch. She stood over the pan while the peppers blistered and charred and the oil popped. Then she pulled them out, squeezed lime over the top, and hid them with soy sauce and salt. Yes, soy sauce. The soy sauce addition came from Asian restaurants that operated in Mexico. A cross-cultural influence most people do not know about. Toreador means bullfighter, and the dark blistered spots on the peppers resemble a bullfighter's scars. Jalapenos were practically free in the 1970s. 5 to 10 cents for a handful at any Mexican grocery. These were a taqueria staple born from street food culture in northern Mexico. Your father bit into one at the table, eyes watering, insisting he was not crying. The kids dared each other to take a bite. That was the dinner table machismo test. Simple, cheap, and effective. Number 6. Rajas con crema. Roasted poblano strips in cream sauce. Your abuela held the poblanos directly over the gas flame until the skin blistered and blackened. That crackling, smoky aroma filled the whole kitchen. She wrapped them in a damp towel, peeled the charred skin with her bare hands, and sliced them into long strips. She sautéed them with onion, added Mexican crema and corn kernels, and let it simmer until the cheese melted into everything. Roasting chiles over open flame dates to pre-colonial times. The cream and cheese were added after the Spanish arrived in 1521, when Gregorio de Villalobos brought cattle to Mexico. Diana Kennedy featured rajas in her 1972 cookbook. In the 1970s, this dish cost less than $1 and served as both a side and a main course. Families from Guadalajara brought this tradition north. Today, restaurants charge $14 for it. Your abuela made it in 15 minutes for pennies. The flavor was never about money. It was about the way her hands worked. Number 5. Ensalada de nopales. Cactus paddle salad. Your abuela sat in the backyard with a knife, carefully scraping the spines of cactus pads she bought for pennies at the mercado. Nopales were domesticated by ancient Mexicans 9,000 years ago. The Chichimeca called them nopali in Nahuatl. She diced the cleaned paddles, boiled them briefly, and tossed them with tomatoes, white onion, cilantro, lime juice, oregano, and crumbled cotija cheese. It had the slimy texture that kids hated but grew to love. It was a dish that connected you to the land itself. In the 1970s, nopales were sold fresh at every Mexican market. This salad sat on the table at every gathering. Cool, tangy, herbal. It cut through the richness of the carne asada and the beans. It was the side dish that balanced everything else. Your abuela made it without thinking. She did not learn it from a cookbook. Her mother taught her, and her mother before that. 9,000 years of tradition in a bowl. Number 4. Frijoles puercos. Loaded, dirty refried beans. The weekend special. Your abuela did not make these on weeknights. These were for when family came over. She rendered the chorizo first, then the bacon. Then she mashed the pinto beans into the sizzling fat and stirred until everything was one glorious smoky mass. She folded in pickled jalapenos and chipotle peppers for heat. Then the cheese went on top, Chihuahua or Monterey Jack, melting into the beans until you could not tell where one ended and the other began. Puercos means both pork and dirty. Like dirty rice, these were loaded refried beans. They came from the northern states, especially Sonora and Sinaloa. Scooping them up with a fresh tortilla chip at a party was pure indulgence. Nobody counted calories. Nobody worried about the lard. Your abuela cooked with lard because that is what her mother used. And that is what tasted right. This was celebration food. It showed up when the family gathered, and it disappeared when the gatherings got smaller. Number 3. Moletes. Bean and cheese open-face sandwiches. The after-school snack that was basically a meal. Your abuela split bolillo rolls in half, spread each one with a thick layer of refried beans, covered them with Oaxaca cheese, and slid the tray under the broiler. 3 minutes later, the cheese was bubbling, and the bread was toasted golden. She topped them with pico de gallo, fresh tomato, onion, cilantro, jalapeno, and lime. The whole thing took 10 minutes. The bolillo came from the panaderia. The beans were always on the stove. The cheese was whatever she had. During the 1950s and 1960s, moletes were a standard in Mexican-American homes across the country. In Mexico, the word came from Spain, referring to a round, crusty roll introduced during Viceroyalty times. The Mexican version adapted with local beans and cheese. Easy, cheap, beautiful. Coming home to the broiler running, and that smell of melting cheese and toasty bread. Your abuela made these in 10 minutes flat. The Mexican grilled cheese. Number 2. Sopa de lentejas. Mexican lentil soup. A Friday Lent food that was, in truth, comfort food. The thick, earthy aroma filled the kitchen on a rainy afternoon. Your abuela simmered brown lentils with carrots, potatoes, tomatoes, onion, garlic, and cumin until everything melted into a hearty, nourishing soup. In Oaxaca, they served it with pineapple and plantains. In other states, it came in a tomato-based broth. Some families added bacon or chorizo after Lent ended. Lentils were brought to Mexico by the Spanish. They cost about 20 cents a pound. A full pot for a family cost well under $1. Served with a squeeze of lime and a bolillo roll, this was one of the most satisfying meals in the Mexican-American kitchen. A reminder that the best food does not need to be expensive. Lentils did not need soaking like other dried beans. They cooked in 30 minutes. For a working mother with 5 children, that speed mattered. Your abuela could start this at 5:30 and have dinner on the table by 6. Fast, cheap, powerful, and good. Number 1. Frijoles charros. Cowboy beans. The smell of a big pot of charros bubbling on the stove on a Saturday morning, while your father prepped the grill for carne asada outside. This was the dish that turned a weekend into an event. Pinto beans simmered in a rich broth with bacon, chorizo, onions, garlic, tomatoes, and serrano chiles. Not refried, but soupy and hearty, and loaded with meat. The charros were the Mexican cowboys of the northern states, Sonora, Chihuahua, Nuevo León. They cooked these in large pots over open fires while working cattle ranches during colonial times. Dried pinto beans cost about 15 cents a pound in the early 1970s. Bacon was 79 cents. Every Mexican family had their own version. Some added ham, some threw in sliced hot dogs. The pot was always enormous because carne asada meant the whole neighborhood was coming. Your abuela stirred that pot slowly and tasted it, and added one more chile, and tasted it again. She never said the recipe was ready. She said it tasted right. That was her only measurement. That pot of charros sitting on the stove is the sound and smell of every Saturday morning. From a childhood you would give anything to go back to. That is a memory that never fades. That was home. Make one of these this week. Just one. The moletes or the frijoles de olla. The esquites or the rayas con crema. Go to the mercado and buy the nopales and the epazote. Stand in your kitchen and try to remember how she did it. Do not look at your phone. Use your hands. If you do not remember, call your tia. Call your mother. Ask them before those hands stop working. Sit down at the table when you eat it, not the couch. Set a place. Eat it slow. These side dishes were never just about filling the plate. They were about making the meal complete. Now, I am not a doctor or a dietitian. This is not medical advice. This is food history and memory. Tell me in the comments which side was your abuela made. I want to know if the frijoles charros or the chiles rellenos get more love. I want to know if anyone else remembers Consuelo Rios and the women like her who fed families on $3.40. Because these were not just side dishes. They were proof that the simplest food made by hand, served with care, can still be an act of love.